Now, on the 2nd of April in 2015, something happened at 5:30 a.m. 4 heavily armed men stormed the Garrisa University, found 2 guards at the gates, they shot them, and then they entered the university. And they rounded up children. Over 700 students were rounded up, held hostage, and these people started shooting them indiscriminately, one after the other. 6 a.m. is when the first police officers arrived. 11 a.m. is when the KDF arrived, and the specialized recce squad arrived later at 2 p.m. But by the end of that day, more than 140 students and workers and police officers lay dead. And we cannot forget that. Now, many things have happened since then. Of course, you can imagine the other students who were there and were lying next to them. Now they're 10 years later, they're already out of university. What are they doing? How do they deal and cope with that trauma? Those parents who lost their children, how do they deal with that trauma? Cases have gone to court. Those who aided the terrorists, the 4 of them were killed. But those who aided them were rounded up and were taken to court. One of them committed suicide. He was called Rashid, a Tanzanian national. He committed suicide at committee in November 2020. Mohammed Ali Abikar was among the 3 other terror convicts who escaped committee prison in 2021, later found in Kitui. But something also big happened in that the court ordered compensation for these attacks. 496 million shillings to students who were injured and to parents who lost their children in this attack. Each of the injured students, 1.2 million to 10 million shillings, depending on the degree of the injuries. For those who died, the judges directed the state to compensate each loss with 3 million shillings. Not enough, of course, because you lost somebody.
Right.
Not enough because you were injured. Now, among the people who dealt with this particular issue is Dr. Oscar Githua, who was there, and he dealt with the students and he dealt with the school community. He's our guest for the next hour, lest we forget, as we commemorate the Garrisa University terror attack. Dr. Githua, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Fixing the Nation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see all of you. Welcome back, Janet.
Thank you. Yeah, right?
Yes. It's great. It's great to be here and to have such an important conversation on the 10th anniversary of such a horrific thing that happened in this nation.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I like what you've said in terms of let us never forget it, because I think far too often we think in our culture that when you forget something, it's going to get out of your psyche. But it's actually the opposite. It really lingers. I was in Garrisa 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the same thing with the people who were affected. And I can tell you that the communities are ravaged. And that's not the only attack. I just came back from Lamu yesterday. If you think about Mpeketoni, you think about all the other attacks that are going on. Nobody speaks about all of those things. So I like to remind Kenyans that even as we are going on with politics and other talks like that, there's actually terrorism that goes on and violent extremism. And I think we really need to talk about that, even as we talk about the healing of people after such horrible effects of things like those happening. And we have to talk about, like what you said, like where are they, what are they doing? So I think...
Yeah, it would be really good to speak to just the psychological effects of terrorist attacks on those who are directly affected, on people across the country, and speaking to why Garrisa is also very close to your heart.
Yes.
But let's go back a bit. Forensic psychologist, that's how you describe yourself. What does that mean?
So a forensic psychologist is a psychologist who's trained, first of all, in forensic psychology. So it's not just anybody who can call themselves that. But in terms of application, a forensic psychologist works in areas of security as well as health. But then security, not only just security, but all forms of security, including the criminal justice system. So everything with law enforcement, intelligence, military stuff. And then detention, which we don't like using that term in Kenya, but that's a correct term. But we're talking about pre-trial detention. And then everything to do with correctional services, and then afterwards, when somebody's released, what happens to them after that. So we're the people who do the assessment, the treatment, the advising government on what happens with things like those. And then also treating people who are considered convicts or reformed convicts, if people want to use that word, across diverse issues and crimes. One of them being terrorism as well, but of course, all other crimes.
That sounds heavy. How many are you now? I think many years ago, it was few.
Yes.
Has the number grown?
Okay, so at my level of doctoral level, I do not know, honestly. But at master's level, I know that some programs had started a while back. One of them, which was prominent, UN shut down, I think, after some time. So there are some forensic psychologists, but I do not know if they're at the level of doctoral level like I am, or even the experience, because I've been doing this for many years now. It seems like a lifetime, you know. But it's been a while. In fact, Janet, the first time we spoke was right after the Westgate attack. Yeah. That was in 2013. So you imagine if I was already doing forensic psychology in 2013, and I'd been doing it at that time for about 7 years. You can imagine how long that's been. So it's been a while. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a heaviness to your work.
Yeah.
I want to zero in on Garrisa University and your response there. Yes. How did you get to respond and to go to the ground and to talk to students?
Okay. So Garrisa University is a unique situation. It's not like all other attacks that we've had. First of all, because at the time, nobody thought there'd be any attacks away from Nairobi. So the focus had been, Nairobi is going to be attacked. That's where there's a lot of secularism, the mall and all that. And we're all on edge because of Westgate. But then Garrisa happens to be one of the largest, if not the largest counties in Kenya. And because it's very far, nobody thought it was going to happen. And nobody had ever thought that terrorists would attack an educational institution. And so because of that, the responses that Eric spoke about happened like that. So how I was involved is because in 2013, we'd already worked under the Kenya Psychological Association. And we had gone and worked with the Red Cross, and we had done some responses for Westgate. But then what we did for Garrisa was a bit different. We wanted a more systemic and systematic response. So there's something called the National Disaster Operations Center back then, which we worked with. We worked with the Red Cross as well, and also worked with the Kenya Psychological Association, and also some colleagues we worked with very closely. And so what we did was, because we couldn't travel to Garrisa immediately, we waited for the students who survived to come back into Nairobi. And so we had to collaborate with the then Minister of Education, CS, Ambassador Amina Mohammed. We also had the PS, Belio Kipsang. We also had the UON Vice Chancellor at the time, Professor Mbithi. We also had other people like those. So I was in that team that was actually preparing to bring them back. And so when they came back, we received them at Nyayo Stadium. I remember it was raining on that day. I remember it very vividly. But then the thing about it was that, the attack happened at 5:30 in the morning. So these are people who are sleeping, majority. So think of yourself, the way you go to sleep, right? So they were not necessarily dressed up and ready for the day. So it was a very vulnerable situation for them. And so we even had, there was a lady, I remember, a girl who had just given birth a week before. And she came with her infant. I remember that was very, it gave us visceral reactions, I remember. So what happened was that we went, received the students, ensured they were reconnected with their families. So of course you can imagine the grief of the parents who've come anticipating to meet their children, and then their children are not on the bus. We also worked with NYS, because NYS are the ones who are doing the transporting of the students, but also they're the ones who went to do the cleanup after at the university. So I want you to hold that thought first, because do we know who NYS are? NYS, the age, right?
It's young people. It's actually the same age.
The same age as the
exactly. So 18 to 24, about. So when we hear NYS, we just see the uniforms and imagine. But these are young people. So they went to do the response. Of course, they're trained. But then we worked with the then Director General, his name is Dr. Nelson Githinji, and he helped. So we actually organized a response for them. But before that, I think you had asked about how we worked with the students. So what happened right after that is unfortunate, actually, because they didn't really get any support until they were relocated, because they couldn't go back to school in Garrisa. So they had to be sent to Moi University, which was at the time Garrisa University was Garrisa University College, a constituent, affiliate, Moi University. So they were taken to Moi University. So some students couldn't register there because it was stigmatized. Sorry.
Hold on. So on this day, the 2nd of April, the attack happens. Okay. They're all locked up in there. That night, did they leave the university?
On the day of the attack?
Yeah.
Yes.
And where did they go?
They came to Nairobi.
to Nyayo
Stadium.
So that's when they were put onto buses and they were all
immediately
all
that
brought
to Nairobi. They were all brought, yeah.
After Nyayo Stadium, where did they go?
So remember I said that they were united with their parents.
Yes.
Now, this was both a mental health as well as security operation.
Yeah.
Because again, you did not want to give up their location and where they were traveling from Garrisa. Remember, Garrisa from Nairobi is about 6 hours away.
Yeah.
So you do not want to put it on the internet, oh, now they're on the road coming. So people had to be distracted. So people were told that they had been taken to their homes, but that's not where they went. They were actually coming to Nairobi under strict guard. Yeah. So they came and they were united with their parents, for the ones who were alive, obviously. But then now the heartbreak begins with the parents of the people whose kids are either in hospital or not alive. And that was really tough to deal with.
Doc, so this is Nyayo.
Yes.
They've come, you have been reunited with your parents.
Yes.
And then you go home.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. That initially...
So that was it, like, okay, Sasa and you here.
Yes.
I guess it's to go home until
yes,
figure out.
Home.
Yeah.
At first. Because remember something, and I think the more I've been around these responses and around the government and around things, I think it's important for people to appreciate how sensitive and how a logistical nightmare it could be.
Yep.
You have about 650 people, about 650 of them coming there. What are you going to do in the heavy rain? We had actually mobilized a lot of psychologists, counselors to wait for them. But at that moment, they don't want to talk to a counselor or a psychologist. They want to see their mom.
They want to see their parents.
They want to see, and in fact, in psychology, the strongest intervention is social support. It's not a psychologist. Nobody wants to see my face after a terror attack. They want to see their mother. They want to see their brother. And so at that point, we had achieved what needed to be done, which was for them to be reunited. At that point, then they were taken home. Unfortunately, many of them come from very far, not close to Nairobi, so they couldn't be reached immediately. So once they went to the university, at Moi University, this is where now the problem begins. They go to Moi, have the lecturers, the staff, the people there, the other students been prepared about who they're receiving.
Yeah.
When people have gone through something like what people went through on the 2nd of April, they're not themselves. And you cannot be yourself. I mean, how can you be yourself after seeing 148 people being butchered in front of you? And these are not just people. They're your friends. They're your really close, they're family to you, basically. So, of course, they went there. Then, of course, problems started. Luckily, DAD, who are the German Educational Exchange Service, Academic Exchange Service, had actually given them a scholarship for a whole year. And I remember meeting the executive director during a conference. At the time, I was in academia. And talking to him, and he's like, oh, you know, Dr. Oscar, you know, we've given them a scholarship. And I was like, wow, I'm really grateful. But then a sense of sadness hit me. I said, wait a minute. A German gave them scholarships?
Yeah.
Something just didn't sit right with me.
Yep.
So I was like, why are Germans helping us in a terror attack that has targeted our country? And I'm speaking like this cognizant that right now I'm in government in a board, but I'm speaking to my colleagues who are in government and telling them that sometimes the optics matter. Optics matter. Who is helping after an attack like that? Is it foreigner? Is it Kenyans? We have to be at the forefront. So that's why I even said, you know, when you're in government, you can do something better. So that's what we did. So I told the executive director, thank you so much for what you're doing, but have you considered about the mental health aspect? And he's like, oh my goodness, we hadn't really thought about it. So we designed a program where we actually went and reached out to the students. We went to Moi University, spoke to the faculty there and the staff fast before engaging with the students who had gone through the thing. And when we met them, it was like a huge sigh of relief. Nobody had talked to them. Nobody had worked with them. So we worked with them, of course, not too long. We stayed with them. I wish we could have done more. We didn't do as much as I wish we could have done. But we actually met with them. We spoke with them. Many of them were able to piece back their lives together after that. But a lot of them, of course, did not, because it's a lasting scar in your life. But we've been learning. I think if you compare the response from Westgate to the response to 14 Riverside, or what people refer to as a Dusit attack, it's very different. So I think we're evolving, and we're actually getting better at the responses now. So that's how we got involved. And then, of course, there's the ones who I said that had been stigmatized. That's important for me to say. So the students from certain ethnicities and religions who once, when they went to Moi, because of what had happened, they were stigmatized, and they said, we can't have these people here. No, you guys can't come because you're the ones who caused it, which of course is not true. But then they ended up going, being taken to Pwani University. So we organized for them to come to Nairobi, and we actually had sessions with them as well. They were deeply traumatized as well, affected. And we worked with them, and hopefully their lives are together. And if any of them is listening, I really wish them a good recovery, and I wish that we can be able to meet again, to be able to do more work with them, just to find out how they're doing and support them.
Oof, I know, it's a lot to process. It's like processing while speaking. You know, we've talked a lot about mental health, psychosocial support. As somebody who's dealt upfront with survivors of terrorist attacks, how much more have we put in place now than we had then that can allow people to continue to access psychosocial support? Because I think that remains a really big gap.
Yes, it is. Okay, so the truth is that at first we were acting like goalkeepers in terms of our responses. And a goalkeeper in a soccer match will wait for the kick to be, the ball to be hit, then react. So now we're trying to be proactive. So there's an institution of government called the National Counterterrorism Center, who are now they're actually the ones in charge of all coordination of counterterrorism and countering violent extremism in the country. And so what we've been doing recently is
this is the board you sit on?
No, I'm on the Counselors and Psychologists Board of Kenya. I'm the chairperson of the board. But this is actually part of my other work. As I said, forensic psychology, forensic security, psychology health. So you'll hear me jump between the two of them a lot because that's my life. But with NCTC, because of that coordination, right now what we're doing is the idea of creating a network of psychologists, professionals, and paraprofessionals who will actually be on standby in case something happens. So that not, if an attack happens in Elwak, Mandera, God forbid, you're not waiting for Dr. Oscar to come from Nairobi to go there. You have some people there who can actually work. So we've been doing that work across the country. We've done that in a few counties now. And so we're trying to expand to have a national network of responders who'll be there. And of course, there's associations that are involved. And the board right now that I sit on is proud to announce that we've actually registered over 4,000 professionals now in the country, which is a huge departure from what we used to have 10 years ago.
How many was it?
Oh my God, okay. Now, who was a professional, Maria?
Great question.
A professional was a person who had gone to a revival meeting on a Sunday and come out on the other side as a counselor.
Oh, no.
But now the law is pretty clear about who a professional
who can call
is.
Themselves a
professional. Yes. The first thing is...
I know. People for revival were just chilling.
He said what he said.
No. Lazima tuseme ukweli. You know, the reality was that counseling has always been looked at as just talking.
Yeah.
But it's not just talking. It's a profession. I've only been a psychologist all my life. And so when somebody speaks like that, it's like kind of demeaning your career, and that's really not the way it is. It's like saying journalism is just talking. You guys know it's not. So it's really much deeper. So I'm proud that we're actually now registering professionals. Minimum level is diploma, and that's according to our act, which is the Counselors and Psychologists Act, Cap 253C, which is actually the one that outlines who is a psychologist, who is a counselor in the Republic of Kenya. So while there are many well-meaning Kenyans, which I really appreciate, I urge everybody who's interested in doing counseling or psychology, please go the extra mile. Do it properly. It's good for you, and it's actually good for the survivors as well. You do not want to have someone who survived something like Garrisa, then you start telling them things that are not based on science or based on healing. You're really going to be harming them more. Yes, or like telling them get over it. I remember after that attack, we had someone who had Chiromo. So after we had dealt with the people who had survived, now it was about dealing with the families of those who had lost people. So we had Chiromo, mortuary, UN, and then we were there, and then I remember seeing someone holding one of the shoulders of a mother and telling her, "It's finished, don't cry." And I'm thinking, ooh. What? Yeah. So we really had to work very closely to make sure that, no, that's not how you respond when somebody has lost a loved one. How do you say, get over it?
I think it's important that you take us through like a session, a typical session that you had with the surviving students and the parents who lost their loved ones. Just to see, so how many like sessions do you have? How do you assess them? How do you know that this person now is at a level where they can walk without your hand?
Okay.
But that's after the break.
No problem.
We are remembering the Garrisa University attack that happened on this day 10 years ago, 2nd of April, 2015. Dr. Oscar Githua, who's a forensic psychologist, was involved in the response, talking to the students, talking to the parents, looking at those who suffered, and also he's going to tell us, so did he also see a psychologist thereafter? Back shortly after this break. Thank you. We shall never forget the 148 people who died in Garrisa. A majority of them students. There were some police officers, some staff of the university also who died. All of them, they matter, and we should never forget them. Dr. Oscar Githua, a forensic psychologist, is our guest. And I've seen a comment here from on YouTube, and this is from Michael Mogo, says, thank you, Dr. Githua. Fixing the nation has to be preventive and preemptive, stabilizing the nation's mental health. Acknowledging and appreciating the work that you do. So, to my question before the break, take us through a session with one of these students who has come. They've been transported from Nairobi, from Garrisa to Nairobi, reunited to the parent, then told report Moi University, and now you're meeting with them, and they still have this fresh in their mind.
Okay, so first I have to explain to your viewers and listeners about what happens after a traumatic event. And generally, if I was to use the number 100 as an example, if 100 people go through a traumatic event, all of them, or majority of them, will have symptoms of being, affected mentally, at least for about 4 to 6 weeks. And that's normal. So we normally say it's a normal reaction to an abnormal event. Nobody's created to see someone else dying. Nobody's created to, But then the science says that after those 4 weeks, or about 6 weeks, about 85% of people will be okay. And that's the interesting thing, 85%. That speaks to human beings' resilience, that we actually can be able to withstand a lot of things, and especially if you go through it as a group, you are able to actually bounce back. But then 15% of people will have difficulty after that. So let me first of all speak about the 85% and like 100%. So after the attack, like you've asked, Eric, we normally use the gold standard of intervention, which is called psychological first aid. Psychological first aid was created after the 9/11 attacks. And what happened was that after the 9/11 attacks, a lot of psychologists descended on New York because they thought everybody was traumatized and they wanted to have sessions with them, sit with them, tell me your childhood, what happened in your past. Then, after a study was done, it was revealed that actually the people who had seen psychologists were doing worse than the ones who did not. I'll tell you why. Yes. I'm a psychologist, I'm the chair of the board, and I've just said that. But it's important for people to understand what I mean. After somebody has gone through something traumatizing, it's not advisable for them to speak about what has traumatized them over and over again. When they speak about it, it re-traumatizes them over and over again. So unless they're in the hands of a professional, you should not do that. So that was the problem. And when you apply psychological first aid, you're not really addressing their childhood issues or trying to go through a whole session. You're trying to connect with them like a human being. You're making a connection with them, and that's why I said when we met them at Nyayo, our first goal was to actually connect them with their parents, mostly their mothers. Actually, the one person who's important, Eric,
Mom.
You and I don't know what we're going to do, but mothers, like most people will say, I want to see my mom. I want to speak to my mother. And that's great. I mean, I think we know that, so we do that. So you stabilize the person as well. You have to assure somebody about their safety and security. You are safe now. The attack is over. You're not going to go through this again. Then they're going to have some specific needs. And needs might even be this water. I want a drink of water. So you're not going to be going to go do like this whole psychological breaking down of what's affecting you now. I mean, So really reach out to them as a human being. And psychological first aid is really great because you can use it across generations, across cultural, cultural specific ways. It's very culture sensitive. For instance, we learned that people from western parts of Kenya, when somebody dies, they're going to be wailing, but then also speaking about the person. And they're speaking about, oh, my son has died. He was the one who was supposed to be providing for us. He was our jewel and stuff like that. But then if you go to another part of Kenya, that's noise. So you have to be culturally appropriate to understand that what they're doing is not noise, and it's their way of starting the process of grief. So that's what I like about PFA. And so we've trained a lot of people in PFA. In fact, Red Cross has been trained in PFA. I helped design that module for them after Westgate. We've also done that with many other people, countless people around the country, so that they can actually just receive them like human beings first. And that's why I'm speaking about professionals and paraprofessionals.
Right.
Now, you asked about how do we assess them. So, of course, if you see somebody is hysterical, is inconsolable, is probably going through physiological responses that you cannot deal with, that person needs now to be graduated up. So now at that point, they have to be referred to a professional, to a psychologist, or to a psychiatrist, or whoever it is, a mental health person who's going to be able to deal with them. So the session, really, the first one, Eric, will not be about going back into their childhood and all that. It will be more about connecting them to their current needs. Like the students from Garrisa, they needed warm clothes. They needed blankets. Remember, they came in their night dresses.
Yeah.
The guys came bare-chested. Just because of how
hivyo kwa floor the whole day, Garrisa.
Na kwa gari, kutoka for 6 hours. Remember, guys, it's Garrisa, it's hot.
Yeah.
And I've been there, and I've worked there for a while, and it's very hot. So it's not logical to imagine that they were dressed fully. So of course, so we had to be careful on this side that it was raining to have clothes. So our appeal at that point is, can we get clothes? Can we get sweaters? Can we get? So Kenyans really responded well, and they gave us that. And for the baby, medical attention immediately, and for the mom. You don't want to go through that stress. You've just given birth, then this has happened. I mean, you don't even know what the effect it's going to have on the infant, you know. So you have to be human, basically. That's the first thing, Eric. It's not even about being a psychologist or anything. It's about knowing the effect of you not probing. How many people are there? So I keep telling people there's this French word called moshene. Okay? It's a French word called moshene that people like in Kenya. So someone's going to be there with someone and ask, hey, how many are they? You're not DCI.
Yeah.
What did you see? What did you see? And you're re-traumatizing them, or you're turning them into an eyewitness for no reason. Right. And the reason you're asking those questions is so that you can have a cool story to tell people at dinner. It's not because you really care. And so we really advise people against that probing. And that idea that, you know, you just want to get this information to go on Twitter to tell people, I'll tell you the real story, I'm the one who knows. That's not what we do. In fact, if you look at my history of tweets, all of them, not even once have we ever mentioned what has happened in any of those things. Because professionally, we're not meant to. Number one, and number two, that's not the goal. The goal is the wellness of the people we're working with. So that's how it looks like. It's mostly psychological first aid. That's the gold standard. We're going to do that. And then after about 6 weeks, which is what we found in Kenya, if somebody still has difficulties, then we're going to graduate it to other more specialized interventions by professionals to actually make sure they cope with it. Because you're dealing with things like grief and loss. Most of those things are not going to hit you until later, because people are around you, they're coalescing around you, they're supporting you together, lighting candles, doing that. Then as soon as another topic in Kenya comes up, everybody shifts and you're left alone. And that's where the real work begins. Yeah.
For the parents, I want to know what the psychological first aid looked like, if it was any different, and how to help them cope with such a difficult loss.
So there's two types of parents, Mariam. The first parent is the parent of a surviving student or member of staff or whatever.
That's true.
And that's someone who is going to be just seeing their kid is therapy enough at that point. I've seen you, sigh of relief. I don't even need to talk to anybody at that point. They might need to talk to somebody to tell them, how do you deal with your child after they've gone through something like that?
Right.
Because they're not going to be sleeping well, they're going to be startled, they're going to be avoiding doing things, they're going to really be showing those signs of distress for about 4 weeks or 6 weeks. So that parent, really, I'm not too worried about them because they already have that kind of like, and of course, if we had resources, that's also someone I'd like to reach, to be able to work with. But let's talk about the parents of someone who's lost someone. Now that's a tall order, and that's where we really need to think as a country. You know, the people I work with, a very good brother and friend, Robert Ochola, he's called Robo. We work with him, and we were talking on our way back from Lamu, and we were saying, what are we going to do for these people? Because the people and the media, sorry to say that, I mean, I'm here, but it's good if I got. And I know the media adage, if it bleeds, it leads. So at the time when it's a big story, it's a story.
Yeah.
And it will be covered very well.
Yeah.
So I always urge media houses, is there a way to, like what you're doing right now, I really applaud it. It's 10 years later. I'm sure maybe other media houses might do the same, but I don't know to what depth. So the idea is, can we follow these people? Can we talk to them? Can we make their stories alive? Because for a parent like that, this person who they were taking to university, maybe they sacrificed everything. They took a loan, sold their land, sold their cows to take this kid to school. Then the kid is killed. What do you do? At that point, they're almost inconsolable.
Yeah.
Because now you're not only talking about the loss of a child, it's also a loss of hope.
Yeah.
It's a loss of future. It's a loss of much more than the person. And so that actually is supposed to be intensive support, but also livelihood support. I think that's where now we can actually make a very big difference. If we coalesce around them. There are not many people. If you think about 148, it's not a lot of people. Kenyans have actually come together around causes like the drought in the northern part. They've come across around a lot of issues.
Yep.
So I think if we were to do something like that, also for survivors of terror attacks, it would really be helpful. Set up a fund of some kind, and then be able to help them and support them. Just this past week, survivors of Mbeketoni attack, really, the stories are horrific. Having your homes burnt, your relatives killed in front of you, being told really horrible things as it's happening to you. Where are we? How can we help as a society?
Okay, so there's a society bit, but because we also have a government, how can we structure that in government so that there is proper structured support for this? Is there a way?
Yeah, there is a way. I think, in my view, first of all, I'd like to applaud all the people, all members of government who've been on the ground when these things have happened. Many of them have hands tied, have protocol that they have to follow, have things they have to do. They have ways you work. In government, you don't just work. You have rules and procedures of how you have to do your work. But there's one single arm of government I'd like to single out. The National Government Administrative Officers.
GAOs.
The chiefs, the ACCs, the DCCs, the county commissioners. These are people who are actually in the community. I was just speaking to the chief from an area called Majembeni the other day, and we were talking about the effects of the Mbeketoni attack. Chiefs from places like Nyeri. And why Nyeri? Because the Mandera Quarry attacks, majority of the victims are from Nyeri, which is so incidental. So about 28 of them. So you go to those villages, then now you have the chiefs who now have the parents of these people, and they're having to deal with them and speak to them, give them rations of food. So they're doing a lot of work. So my suggestion would be, there's two ways. Number one, through Ngao, but also through civil society. Let me say that very loudly. Because we know about trust issues and government sometimes. I'm not accusing government. As a matter of fact, I think government is an enabler of helping the services reach the people. And they also need to give access, and as well as security and protection. But then civil society also has the tools to be able to reach the community. And there's also a trustworthy component to it. So for me, that's how it could be structured, in my view. If we had a fund somehow that can actually get the necessities, and we can even have a package. You've seen what happened in the US after Katrina. All the families had, I was in the US at the time, and I remember seeing them having packages where they give every family
like a care package.
Like a care package of some kind, which had very specific things. But beyond that, there's also livelihood support. Some of the people who are victims or survivors, actually, of these attacks are people who are subsisting. So you really need to just help them out, set up a small shop, maybe help them pay school fees or access bursaries, Eric. Why would I be, if I'm an MP of an area which has gone through an attack, why am I giving my children bursaries? Yet someone who's destitute and has gone through something like this could require that. And it's a government mechanism anyway.
Let me ask you, how can we broaden our scope of empathy as Kenyans?
Wow.
Because people feel like they're already carrying so much. But you've raised a good point. You've said in Katrina, people not only gave care packages, but tried to follow through and make sure people are back on their feet. Kenyans are, good people. They'll show up, they'll help, but they're also dealing with black tax and all these other things. So they're like, how do we broaden our scope of empathy as a country that's already everybody kind of facing their own stress?
Yes. No, and that's a big thing. There's a concept called empathy erosion.
Empathy erosion.
Yes.
There's a compassion fatigue.
Oh, yeah, I did a video on compassion fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. So compassion fatigue is different, because compassion fatigue is when, Mariam, if you're my client or I've been helping you, I get to the point where I'm like, I'm used to your problem. To the point where I'm like, you know what?
Another day, another crisis.
Yes, whatever.
What did he do this time?
Exactly.
And then in your mind, you switched off.
You switched off. So you're there, but you're really not there. Empathy erosion, on the other hand, is the depletion of empathy that a normal human being has in any general situation. I'll give you a good example as to how that has happened. In the 1990s, if you're walking in Nairobi, outside here, and then your bag was snatched, Mario, or Janet, if your bag was snatched, in the 90s, what would happen to the person?
Mob justice.
Eric knows.
Chap chap. Muizi guy.
People will run, they'll come and whatever. So, Eric, let's now fast forward 2025. Janet has just come out of nation. She's gone outside here. Her bag is not. What happens?
Muizi, we look at her.
No, she'll be screaming alone. Then I'll be like this. Exactly.
You take a phone.
And I'll put on
That's true.
And then it will be on TikTok. Woman
robbed.
And then you're even in the selfie, right?
God.
Now, that doesn't mean that Kenyans are bad. It just means what you've said. They're so covered in their own other issues. They're overstressed, they're overstretched. The economy, a lot of things that are not going right for them. Interest rates. I mean, everything is not going right for them. So asking them to spare another piece of empathy for someone else's problem, they just say the only thing I can do is pray for you. And they won't even pray, actually. Right after they say that, let's go away. They told you that so they can feel better that they told you something nice. They don't really even have it in themselves, okay? And that's really what happens, the reality, right? So that erosion of empathy is something we've seen that has actually also contributed to a lot of rise in things like crime, even radicalization, a lot of things, because we really don't care about we're not our brothers and sisters keepers anymore. Right. And that's why someone can suffer and we don't really care about it.
What's the long-term effect of that to a society?
Well, you become, I don't want to say depraved, but you become soulless. It's like your society becomes soulless. Yeah, you have a country, it has infrastructure, it has cars, but you're not really a country. You're not a nation.
And somebody goes through something and you're just like...
You're numb to it. You're like, get over it.
You see, I like your program, guys, because it's, it's fixing the nation. I think fixing the soul of the nation would be my goal.
Your contribution to
My contribution to it. Because we're losing our soul. So we're Kenyans just because we have a passport. Oh, we have these things, Eric. These bands.
Yes.
So we're showing you we're Kenyans. I have the kind of thing. So we're Kenyans just by how we look. But inside, are we really Kenyans? What does being Kenyan mean? Do we really care about each other? Do we really mind about what other people are going through?
So how do we start to do that? Because I'm thinking about the fact that it's 10 years since Garrisa, and even trying to hold space for what those people went through. And some people feel helpless, like, how do I still hold space for the Westgate survivors? Is there anything I can do right now? But then how do we reclaim our souls?
Okay, I think we're not. It's not all lost. For me, I'll give you a good story. After all this whole story about Garrisa, there's also a story of resilience that I want us to talk about. If you go to Garrisa University today and you walk in through the gate, it's beautiful. It has a garden, and then there's a memorial, which I love. I've taken pictures in front of that memorial a few times because I've always been the proponent of saying that if people are shot by the gun of a terrorist, you need to know their names.
Yep.
Know their name. That is the first stand against terrorism and violent extremism. Mention that, but they're not just a person.
Not just a number.
Not just a name, not a number. They're a person with a story and whatever. So for me, if you go to Garrisa University, you find people, there's someone like Professor Hamo, there's others, the professors we were with just a couple of weeks ago, who've done a great thing. Even the current VC, the Vice Chancellor was there also at that time.
Wow.
So you have to imagine that the kind of like burden a leader like that might have 10 years into it and seeing what happened. So the institution has stood. They've painted a lot of the places. Of course, there's parts which you could help. So for me, what would I say? If we want to hold space for these incidents, can we name all the incidents? Can we do something specific for those incidents? Can we go and actually just show a show of support? If it's painting the walls, let's paint them. If it's about covering those bullet holes, because there's some places where they still have bullet holes, can we go and mark them? Unless it's like a museum of never again. Yeah. If that's what we want, let's go and renovate the place. Let's give it life. And you know what? Another thing they've done, they have a garden, a memorial garden, where they planted 148 trees next to the memorial. And guess what happens in that memorial garden? People go for lectures there now.
Wow.
And that's amazing. To me, that's a story of resilience. They've actually been able to say, we will never forget that this happened. Each of these trees symbolizes one of the lives that was lost. But also it represents life. And we can actually propagate education, we can go ahead. So for me, how do we hold space for them? Because we already are so burdened, it's taking incident by incident, area by area, and in our own little way, contributing. And so one of my goals is to have a fund of some kind and to work with people and say, if we could have a survivors fund.
Yes.
To me, that would be really great because we know the people who are involved and we can actually be able to work with them.
Yeah.
To actually...
I want to mention something. Githua Sharia grounds are honoring the memory and justice for the victims of the Garrisa University attacks. Right. It's happening today from noon to 1 p.m. So memorial and prayers, parents and survivors of the 2015 Garrisa University terrorist attacks, honoring the memory and justice.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sorry.
No, sorry. I wanted to ask, just from what you last said, from the students themselves and from their parents, what does justice look like for them? I know it's there's no such thing, but if you could get close.
Okay, so it's a catch-22 situation because nobody asks for a terror attack to hit their country. And so even tasking government with the reparations or like paying is kind of like, I'm not saying it's not possible. It could be possible and it should be done to some degree. But justice actually is the healing because you can't bring back the person. And also number two, apprehending the perpetrators. It's really important. And just really funding counterterrorism and counter-violent extremism efforts in the country. That's another way you can get justice. Because guess what? When someone is radicalized, a lot of times they're really vulnerable and they're radicalized to actually, to do all these things. They really didn't they didn't know that's what they were signing up for. For them, it's like a religious duty or a holy thing, which obviously...
Or a financial decision as well.
Yes, for some, yeah. But mostly because they've been promised paradise and other things, which they end up finding out are not true. So justice would look like ensuring that the space for counterterrorism and violent extremism has actually been covered well, has been funded well, people are cognizant of it, we speak about it, we actually put a lot of tools in the society to understand and recognize, and also being our brother's keepers. If I walked in here with a backpack and I just left it lying around, someone should be able to say something. If you see something, say something. Those things are the things I'm talking about. Also, just when you start seeing someone's behavior changing, all of a sudden, you have a friend who's just been okay, then all of a sudden they're driving big cars, then they're segregating themselves, they change their name, they start to... Those things should concern you because normally those are some of the signs of what starts happening with people who are getting radicalized. And then so, like, if you look at the Dusit attack, the person behind it, Ali Salim Mishunga, he came back into the country, changed his name, he was called Farouk, did everything. He was actually out, and I think Nation did a segment, or a feature on it. And he came around, he got married, but if people had actually been observing, and I'm not talking about government, I'm talking about people, they would have known, first of all, who is this guy who fell from nowhere, seems to be having this really nice life, has strange movements, you don't know where he works, he just stays in the household, say something. This would never happen in Ethiopia. Oh yeah.
Do you think people understand that whole concept of Nyumba Kumi? Because that's why it's coming to, that community and then having that way of reporting. Or have we looked at it as a way of government just trying to interfere with our lives and lord over us?
But Eric, I'll ask a question to answer the question. Are Kenyans Nyumba Kumi-ish? If you really think about it, are we Nyumba Kumi-ish? In reality, the way we are structured...
Communally, we are.
Do you remember that French word you said?
Yes.
When Nyumba Kumi, when it comes to mushi,
yes.
We are. I think we're capable of being Nyumba Kumi for other things.
Yeah, and I think traditionally we are.
Yeah.
I mean, we are communities.
Yes.
That's how we are in our DNA. When we've urbanized, Eric, we've lost it.
Let me challenge that a bit.
Okay.
We like saying we are communal as African. We like it. It sounds nice. It's a good buzz thing. But are we really?
We are.
No, we're not. Janet, we're not. Why then do we have people whose neighbors are not going to school? They have money. They can't support the neighbor. Why then do you have black tax, you see? So I'm saying, what I'm talking about is Nyumba Kumi in its envisioning was about, do we visit each other? Do we really know about each other? Do we care about each other? Do we allow, like now in my house, I have kids hanging around almost the whole day, every day. And I like it because for me, that's Nyumba Kumi. That's how you're going to get to know. Even some of them, I don't even know their parents. But the kids, because the kids now know each other. And like,
I think we lost it
and
along
that's
the
how you
way.
get to know.
Yes.
I remember growing up.
Yeah.
If if I did something in somebody's house, my folks would be like, you can punish them there, it's okay. Exactly. Then when they come home, I'll do it again.
Today,
so there was
today,
I think today is when we're losing it.
It's changing.
We need to think about that.
And the reason I said that, Eric, I'm just being devil's advocate. So that we can actually now become cognizant and become deliberate about doing Nyumba Kumi. So that it's not just an administrative requirement that we have a Nyumba Kumi lead. No. What does Nyumba Kumi mean? Do we really do things together? Are we structured in a way where we actually care about?
It's not a policing way.
No, it's not a policing way. No, it's about life. Because in Tanzania, how comes it works in Tanzania?
It's just doing life together.
Okay.
Doing life together.
Dr. Oscar Githua, thank you very much for coming today.
Wow.
And thank you for all the work that you do.
I know.
All the work that you've done as well.
Thank you.
In all those. And just helping people cope. And also helping the government to understand that coping is a thing. Yes. And it's a need. He's a forensic psychologist. He's been here with us, taking us through the aftermath of the Garrisa University attacks 10 years ago on the 2nd of April, 2015. Lest we forget, and we cannot forget. Thank you for tuning in to our conversations today. It's one conversation at a time, and that's how we shall fix the nation. The girls are back to work.
They are. Winnie, Wikali, every time you see them in the monitor, they're just smiling and laughing. Right. So they're about to spread some joy. We'll just keep watching because it starts anytime from 10 a.m. Your World. We're going to be able to listen into, Winnie and Wikali. In the meantime, again, just a quick reminder, Kituo Chasheria Grounds, noon to 1 p.m. sharp. They're going to be honoring the parents and survivors of the 2015 Garrisa University terrorist attack. If you can, attend. And more than that, let's get back our empathy and see how we can extend that beyond just the incidents.
Indeed. Do have a lovely and beautiful and fruitful Wednesday. We'll be back here tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Fixing the nation, one conversation at a time. The three of us here, Eric Latif, Mariam Bishar, and Janet Bogwa, plus you, wherever you are. See you.